Today I'm going to be working on drilling the holes that I need to turn the solid end pieces into the sleeves that are going to hold the handles for the saw. This file handle kind of shows where I'm heading. The handles are actually going to be made out of wood, but there's going to be a metal pin going through these end pieces, and that's going to have a clip that's going to hold onto the blade. The straight saw frame won't fit into my drill press, so what I've done here is normally referred to as a convenience bend. It's just a very shallow bend that gives you the ability to move something out of the way so that you can get the work done. I heated it up to an orange heat so that I could bend it and then straighten it back out again later without putting any stress in this part of the frame. And of course, keep in mind that this needs to be straightened back out, so don't put any sharp corners or hammer marks that are going to be hard to deal with later on. You want to bend it as little as possible, and you want to make sure that the bend has a really large radius that'll straighten out very easily. The layout die is just a permanent marker, and I'm going to be using a pair of dividers to scribe the location of the center punch mark. I'm going to be drilling this hole from both sides, so I'm going to be repeating this process on the inside of the frame as well. So here I'm getting ready to do the drilling. I have an angle plate on the drill press table, and I'm double checking to make sure that the drill is 100% square with that table, and I'm going to be checking that from both directions. And then once I have that established, I'm going to be using the angle plate to make sure that I have the frame clamped 100% square to the table as well. If you don't have an angle plate like this, you can use a regular square. It's just that they're a little bit more awkward to hang on to. An angle plate just tends to sit there on its own. So if my drill is sharpened properly, it should track a perfectly straight hole through this block. This is a drill gauge if you're not familiar with this tool, and it is what you need to make sure that your drills are tuned up properly. This is actually a protractor and a drill gauge combined in one, but that inside leg is the only part that you're going to be using for the drills. So this gauge gives you the two bits of information that you need. It gives you the proper angle for the cutting edges, and it has a scale on the inside leg, and that allows you to measure each flute to make sure that they are exactly the same length. To drill an accurate hole, each flute has to be at the same angle and be exactly the same length. So what you would do is you'd measure one flute, rotate this drill around, and then measure the other side to get them the same length. I normally don't bother with this. I just sharpen my drills by eye, and as long as they make chips, I'm happy. But with a job like this, where I have a lot of time invested in this frame already, and I want to make sure that I have an accurate hole, I do take the time to make sure that everything's right before I go ahead. And of course, it goes without saying that you need to be able to see these lines clearly to make those measurements. So if you're over the age of 45, that usually means you're going to need something to magnify that scale up so you can see it. So most people use something like this. This is just a cheap unit from Harbor Freight, but it works extremely well. And once you have everything set up, the drilling is pretty straightforward. I usually just touch the drills off very lightly to begin with to just reinforce that center punch hole. And then I just work my way in gradually until the drill is totally encased in the metal, and then you can pretty much apply as much pressure as you want at that point. If you start in too fast, the drill will tend to wander a little bit. Especially with a forging like this, the top and the sides are not perfectly square with each other, so I squared up the one face that I needed, but the top edge probably still has a bit of a slope to it, so the drill is going to start skating downhill until it gets buried in the metal. So you need to go very carefully to minimize that as much as possible. And then here I'm just using the calipers to see if I'm still on the center line. There isn't a lot I can do about it right now, but it's just a good way to double check. Starting to drill from the inside of the frame, because that is the only part of the frame that you're going to see. So if that hole has wandered off too much, it's going to be very noticeable. The other end is going to be covered by the handle, so I don't really need to worry about that one as much. I still want to get it as accurate as I can, but if it drifts a little bit, it's going to be a lot easier to deal with. Here I have the frame flipped over and I'm starting to drill the handle side of the frame. Because the end isn't supported, I'm having a little bit of trouble keeping it in position. It tends to want to twist away from the pressure of the drill, so I keep that angle block handy so I can make sure that I'm always staying in line. Here I'm getting ready to drill the through hole with the 1/4 inch drill that I'm going to be using for the pins for the handles. The final step is to add a counter bore on the handle side of the frames. This is going to accept a small collar that I'm going to put onto the pins for the handle. That way the pressure is taken up by this metal collar and not the wooden handle. Normally these frames are made out of wood and they have a large bearing surface that, the handle can rest up against, but this is going to be a lot smaller, so I think I'm going to need to engineer some kind of a small collar in there that'll take up the pressure and keep the frame from grinding into the handle. So the holes turned out alright, so now I can go ahead and do the final finish on this frame. Hi, I'm Dennis and thanks for watching. As most of you know, for the past few years I've been producing YouTube videos on a part-time basis. I am now looking to turn that hobby into a full-time job, and for that I really need your help. A small monthly contribution from a really small number of viewers will generate the income that I need to achieve that goal. So if you're interested in the work that I'm doing and you want to lend your support, please click on the Patreon icon at the bottom of the screen. Thank you. We'll see you next time.